Good evening. Welcome to the International Great Black Read Aloud Day 2022. It is day 20. We have 8 more days to go in this month of reading of Black history in the United States. However, we are reading words written by Black people all around the world. So if you are joining us from other countries, why don't you drop us a line and let us and tell us that you're listening in? And we promise to stay connected to you. My name is LD Robinson, and I am the founder of the International Great Black Read Aloud Day, where we are here giving voice to words written by Black people all around the world. And so we are reading from every genre because we know that our contributions to literacy and to literature are vast. And so that is what we're doing, reading something different every day on a different topic, a different genre, a different category of literature. And so today is day 20, and it is Detective Mystery Day. And our selection today is a detective mystery suspense kind of deal. And it is The Woman Trapped in the Dark by author J.D. Mason. And so we are going to read from um, the chapter title, I Try to Hide. And we want to remind you that you should subscribe. Yes, subscribe to our website at greatblackreadaloudday.org. And you should follow us online at Black Read Aloud. And if you're out there reading, which we hope you are, we hope that you are out there tagging your stuff, hashtag TigRat. And so our selection for today is, once again, The Woman Trapped in the Dark by author J.D. Mason. I tried to hide. Abby jolted awake, disoriented, terrified, poised to fight. After several moments, she realized that she was alone on a yoga mat on the floor of a small room. What had they done to her? The thought struck fear in her so strong that it was nearly paralyzing. And without warning, she started to cry as she intensely focused on her body. Abby ran her hand down the front of her t shirt and shuddered at the thought that came to mind. Rape. Had they She collected herself enough to assess her body. Abby still had on the clothes she'd gone to bed in the night they took her. A pair of cotton shorts and a t shirt seemed to be intact. And nothing seemed. She took several breaths. Abby reached inside her shorts to discover that she was still wearing panties. If they had assaulted her, she couldn't be sure, but it didn't seem like they had. Her stiff jaw ached from where she'd been hit, and there was a cut on the inside, tender and raised. She noticed it when she raked the tip of her tongue across it. Abby surveyed her surroundings, and when she saw the door, she shakily struggled to get to her feet and made her way across the room. It was a hollow steel door with a latch plate shielding the locking mechanism in the seam between the door and frame. Screwed in next to the knob, Abby pounded her palm against it. Hey! She waited for a response. Let me out! Let me! Help me! Somebody please help! She pounded until her hand ached and she was almost hoarse before finally giving up. Sunlight filtered through one small window near the top of a 9 foot high ceiling, a window too high for her to reach and too small for her to fit through. A small air vent was at the opposite end of the ceiling. The walls were painted white, but were like concrete, like the floor. Abby sat on the mat on the floor with her back pressed into one corner of the room, her knees drawn up to her chest, sobbing uncontrollably. This whole ordeal was like something out of a nightmare that she couldn't shake herself awake from. What did they want with her? Why had they done this? Were they going to kill her? Why? Was she still in blink? She didn't know. Abby had been unconscious part of the time when they had her in the back of that car. She had no idea how long they'd driven before she finally come to. Suddenly, it dawned on her that nobody even knew she'd been back in town. Abby had only planned on packing up a few more of her things to take back with her to Dallas, and spending the night had been a spur of the moment decision. She hadn't called anybody, not her father or not her best friend Sky. The only person she'd spoken to about even being in Blink was Jordan. You were supposed to wait, he'd said over the phone, doing his best impersonation of being the boss of her. But Abby wasn't accustomed to being told what to do. I suppose I could have waited, she said calmly, but I didn't want to. Besides, I needed to pick up a few things and figured that today was as good a day as any to do it. Jordan sighed deeply and took his time responding. Things are different now, Abby. People know about us and precautions need to be taken where your comings and goings are concerned. So what you're trying to tell me is that I need a bodyguard? I mean like a bodyguard or two. She found the whole notion ridiculous. That's just silly, Jordan, she quipped. Not to mention embarrassing. What would I look like coming back to Blink, Texas with armed guards surrounding me? People would think I was acting like Beyonce or somebody. I don't care what people would think. You'd be safe. I'm a big girl. I can take care of myself. Abby got it. He wasn't happy about her leaving alone, but Blink, Texas was her home. Of course, she felt safe there, safer than she ever did in Dallas. She appreciated his concern, but it felt like overkill. Obviously, it wasn't. Abby had promised to call him before she'd left the house the following morning to head back to Dallas. She'd promised to be back at the penthouse first thing, but what if she wasn't? Abby put herself in his shoes. Jordan would call her, and when she didn't answer, when she didn't show up like she'd promised, he'd worry. A small light of hope sparked inside her. Jordan would come looking for her. He'd call the police and her father. It wouldn't be long before the whole town knew that she was missing. The police would go to her house and they'd see that there'd been a struggle. He'll look for me, she whispered. He will. She swallowed and fought to compose herself. Suddenly, it was all starting to come together. Since the governor's ball a month ago, Abby had become the new phenomenon. She was the mystery woman on Jordan Gatewood's arm that night, and the public had become more and more curious about her. Those men had found out about her too, and they'd probably been waiting for her to show up at the house or something. Ransom. This was about money. Abby had been abducted because of Jordan and who he was and what he had. The more she thought about it, the more it made sense. Jordan already knew. He had to know. They had to have called him and told him what they'd done and what they wanted. Instead of sitting here and falling apart, she needed to pull herself together. Abby took a deep breath and released it slowly, then dried her tears. Yeah, she was scared, and she had no idea what these people were planning to do to her, but she wasn't dead yet. And Jordan, or no Jordan, she needed to find a way out of here. Think, Abby, she murmured, scanning the room for even the smallest details. The blue mat was basic. There was no zipper or buttons on it that she could possibly remove and use to try to pry open that door and escape. Other than that, there was nothing else in that room. Shh, she said in frustration and pushing back panic. Abby had to pause to calm herself. What the hell was she even looking for? She looked up at the door. She picked the lock to her front door once with a credit card when she lost her keys. They made sure that she wouldn't be able to pick this one. Just then, Abby heard noises on the outside of the door, the sound of another door opening and closing. Fear washed over her as she thought about those two men who'd abducted her that night. Her heart racing, she pushed back against the wall, bracing herself, recoiling and preparing to fight them again. Hot tears pooled in her eyes. Abby strained to hear voices, but there were none, just the sounds of heels clicking against the floor, getting closer to the door leading to this room. A key turned in the door and it was slowly pushed open. Abby was trembling but didn't realize it. It was a woman, tall, lean with an almost boyish build, wearing black jeans, a long-sleeved gray V-neck shirt, and low-heeled black leather boots. Like the two men, she wore a black ski mask to hide her face, but long waves of blonde hair hung down her back and shoulders. She cautiously entered the room, wearing dark sunglasses, carrying a clear plastic bag with a sandwich in it and a small bottled water. She set both items on the floor, then stood next to the door and waited. Eat, the woman said. Abby glanced down at the sandwich and almost threw up just looking at it. She swallowed bile rising in her throat and then looked back at the woman. Please let me go, she begged. Please. I won't say anything. You don't have to do this. Eat, she repeated, sounding like a robot. I don't want this. The woman seemed uncertain as to what to do next. Please let me go, Abby said, detecting what seemed to be a sign of weakness in this woman. You are a woman, she continued. Eat. Whatever you want, Abby promised shakily. I can get you whatever you want. Money? Do you want money? Abby nodded. I have money, and if it's not enough, I can get more. She sniffed. Those other two don't have to know, and I won't tell. I swear to God, I won't tell. Eat. Abby shook her head. I don't want to eat. Let me go. Without uttering another word, the woman bit down to pick up the sandwich and the bottle. Abby sprang up from the floor and bolted, pushing the woman so hard that she fell as Abby raced past her, through the door and out into what looked like a dishwashing area of an old restaurant. She ran past rusted sinks and through a doorway that led to an open eating area filled with wooden tables stacked with broken chairs toward another door next to a big window. Adrenaline drove her to run as fast as she could, as far as she could. Abby was getting away. She'd escaped. Sunlight flooded in, momentarily blinding her as she finally made her way outside. That woman was behind her. Abby could feel her closing in. She glanced at the car parked out front and started to head out onto the road when she spotted another car barreling toward her. Abby pivoted and ran toward the wooded area behind the building. Twigs and thorns dug into Abby's bare feet, but she didn't dare slow down. Her chest burned. What the? She heard a man say. Nay, she won't get far. Don't stop, she commanded over and over again in her mind. Don't fall. Excuse me. She had to go faster. Abby could almost feel the pounding of his steps behind her, reverberating up through the ground, closing in, getting closer as she wound her way through the maze of trees with agonizing pain, shooting through the soles of her feet from splinters embedded in them. She felt herself starting to slow down, or maybe he was speeding up. She wasn't sure. Just go, Abby, she sobbed desperately. Keep going. Keep. She was grabbed by her shirt from behind and pulled down to the ground. Abby kicked and screamed as he lifted her off the ground by her waist. She clawed into his arms with one hand and reached over her head for his face with the other. He never said a word to Abby or to the woman. Look at him, she told herself, trying to turn to see his face, but he pushed her head down. Get my mask from the car, he told the woman as they made it back to the building. Hurry up. He stood there, holding Abby, still fighting to free herself. Stop it, he demanded, shaking her like a toy. I mean it. The woman came back, and moments later, Abby was back inside that room and dropped on the floor. By the time she looked up, both were gone, and the man was closing the door behind him. The sound of the key turning in the lock sent a chill up her spine, and Abby collapsed, exhausted and afraid, and pissed at herself for getting caught. Abby crawled over to the mat. God, she'd almost gotten away. If he hadn't showed up, she would have. This wasn't happening. It was all too surreal and ridiculous. She was still waiting for the sound of the alarm on her phone to go off and to finally wake her up. Please let it go off. She had no idea how long she lay there, staring up at that small window before a thought came to her and reminded her of a time in the very beginning of their relationship when Jordan had asked her to be brave. He'd said that the kind of love that the two of them shared would take courage. It was a strange thought to have at a time like this, but somehow she knew that it had come to her for a reason. Abby had to be brave if she was going to make it through this. And if it did have something to do with Jordan, then she would have to believe in him, believe that he'd find a way to get to her. She had to believe in the two of them. It soothed her, calmed her, thinking of him, and maybe it even keep her from going crazy. If I don't get out of here first, Jordan, she murmured. You find me, Jordan. She sobbed softly, closed her eyes, and focused on a single thought: please find me. That is from our selection for today for Detective and Mystery: The Abduction of Abby, the Woman Trapped in the Dark, by author J.D. Mason. And you have joined us for day 20 of the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. And we've been reading for 20 days today. Something written by Black people from all around the world. We have read selections from Black British people. We have read selections from South African Black people. And we have read multiple selections from those in the US. And so we will continue for the next 8 days, closing out our month of Black history here in the United States by reading works from all over the African diaspora, as we continue to give voice to words written by Black people all around the world. So we want to remind you tomorrow that we will be on day 21. Yes, day 21, 21 days of reading. And tomorrow our topic is overcoming addiction. And so we look forward to tomorrow as we share something good and encouraging about overcoming addiction. And we want to remind you that you should subscribe to our website and that you should follow us online at Black Read Aloud. And we will see you tomorrow for day 21 of the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. We hope that you are finding books that you can read, books that you enjoy, written by Black people that that are expanding what you read. And so we are excited because we know that there's so much literature out there. There are so many books out there written. There are so many things out there written by Black people. And so we want you to enjoy those because we believe, like our partners do at Fresh Book Festivals, that literacy is a legacy. If you leave anything to anyone, leave them the ability to read. And so that is the one thing that they can do, which will carry them through everything possible in life. They can read for their spiritual growth. They can read for their their educational growth. They can read for their mental health. They can read for career choices. They can read for read about a lot of things if they have the ability to read. And so we'll see you tomorrow for another great selection for the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. Thank you. Have a good night.